mic working?
Click on it.
No, it's working.
Whoa.
There we go. Yeah, so you said the word gateway, right? Like Grasshopper, Dynamo being the gateway drug. It's almost like once you experience that high, you never want to go back. It's like your first little slippery slope in. It's a kind of crude metaphor, but I think it's true in a way that like once you've sort of been able to like make your model dance, as I always like to say, it's crushing when you see a project that's unable to do that.
For me, it was I never, like I said in the presentation, I never liked the idea of doing anything twice. I think it was because when I worked at Gary Technologies, I was not allowed to automate anything, and it was the most painful job ever to really like click 1,000 times to build one wall and do that for the whole building. So Grasshopper enabled us early on to package logic that was repeatable, and so very quickly we could build a library of components that was reusable, and that was kind of how it started naturally.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth mentioning that McNeil actually put cocaine in the original Grasshopper.
See more and more.
But I think, yeah, for me it was like, I actually didn't want to use Grasshopper at first, and my students kind of forced me to. It's a funny story, they actually made a petition at the University of Cincinnati. They're like, we demand to be taught computation. And they're like, Brian, you have to do this, you're the closest to the machine here. But I think that it was kind of fairly easy to plug into because of its visual nature. It appealed to kind of my visual designer side, but it also makes the flow of information visual and explicit. I think that's like a really major part of how you can kind of understand what the hell is going on versus textual programming where, you know, that's not really diagrammed as you work.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's something to be said for the kind of visual appeal of kind of working this way. It almost, you know, feels like a toy at first, but it's very graphical, it's very intuitive to folks working in kind of a design space. And yeah, I mean, it is totally like addicting to, you know, kind of take something that you've done once or twice and then turn it into a thing that you'll never have to do again. And I think, you know, the challenge comes at that kind of next threshold where it's like, okay, I've built all these tools that work really well for myself, and then how do I share this? How do I make this something that like other people can benefit from?
And then in line with that, it seems like a lot of this comes out of just being unhappy with the feeling limited by particular software and the trying to augment that software. But when you start to cross that threshold of working with the software to kind of developing your own software on top of that.
I mean, I think one point about limitations is that they're actually like not a bad thing, and they're also totally inevitable. Like you just always, there are always going to be kind of limits of what you can do within a particular piece of software. And some platforms have been really good about kind of permitting the API to lay open just a massive field of possibilities that go above and beyond what the software itself can do. And yeah, I mean, I think that like, you know, at a certain point you do want to kind of own everything, but then you have to sort of take off all of the training wheels of like a really good geometry kernel that's like there, and you know, all of the kind of built-in features that come from these design platforms, and you know, it adds a bunch of additional overhead to kind of doing that development. But the rewards can be great in terms of speed, in terms of interaction, in terms of access for all kinds of other parties and stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, with software UIs kind of impose a particular like rhetoric or a particular worldview on you, and you kind of initially approach them as like, well, here are a dozen ways I can approach this design problem, and some of them do things better than others. But as you get more comfortable with design computation and code in general, you start to realize that there's a lot of kind of more open and accessible underlying stuff, which is the API. So now we're really just banging on people's doors, asking for more open APIs. It allows you to approach things in a totally different way. It also allows you to take things from like web technology, or take things from one platform into another platform and start to mix and match to build something that is bespoke to your process. But then, like Andrew mentioned, there's the broader challenge of how does this serve more generic needs, both within my kind of organization and within the industry.
I think for us it was probably, like I showed in the presentation, the idea of scalability. That, you know, if I work on one project at a time and I devote my 500 hours or probably more like 2,000 hours to this one stadium, then I can only touch that one stadium during that one summer. But if I start actually zooming out, then all of a sudden I can enable maybe 100 projects at once to be all touched by a tiny amount. And so again, we started with Grasshopper tools, and we just realized that maybe there are still some people in the company that don't work in Grasshopper, you know, like the other 95% of the people in our company, and so we just naturally wanted to give them different sorts of tools, like web-based viewers and such.
Yeah, just one last comment from kind of the developer's point of view, or someone who's getting into like moving beyond the Grasshopper gateway drug. It's super empowering, I think, and liberating to know that you're not stuck with the stuff that you get off the shelf. You're able to sort of cobble things together, and it's an attitude change. It goes from, oh, we can only do so much to, okay, well, we can find a way to make this work. And I think that's super critical in terms of like developing productive culture inside of a firm.
I mean, you could, one last comment here, you could argue that Revit is the single greatest influencer of contemporary architecture. Are you comfortable with that? Like, but that's kind of what's happening, and the reason is because they know how to make software. So if you learn how to make software, you can actually make decisions about where the industry is headed. I think that's pretty important.
Any questions? Back to you.
Thanks for the great presentations. Brett Victor, I don't know if you're familiar with Brett Victor, he made the point that programming lumps together authoring and engineering. Do you guys find that one or other of those is more important to your work?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's actually blurrier than it might seem. Like, I feel like, I think Brian started to allude to this too, and Yonatan as well, that like you get to touch more, you get to, in a sense, author more by virtue of kind of, developing these tools. And it also, it's a way of like converting the nature of a problem. There's, a design problem that's about, solving for X, doing X, Y, or Z, is one kind of problem, but the problem of how you like write a script that generically approaches that problem is sort of a way of like turning it into a different problem domain, and I think that's kind of the engineering part of it. That's the part that like is really appealing for, I think, like people like us, but I think that's not an exclusive thing. I think anybody can kind of be allured by the desire to kind of think about things in this engineering mindset, and it's a way of turning a potentially really boring problem, like where should you put the desks in this room, into a really challenging and rewarding technical problem.
Yeah, it's a funny thing too, because it's, I don't want to get all like poetic about the search for truth, but like if you just look at, but I do. But like, I think about, first it's like, hey, I need to fix this facade, but like in my mind I'm like, oh, I've done like a million facades, so let's like keep trying to find like the magical algorithm that kind of accommodates all of the design change and variables. But there's like other stuff too, like you said, there's like making kind of broader, more generic design space when someone kind of brings you a problem. But there's also like what's gonna like compute faster and be more like responsive to change. They start trying to like build stuff out of lower level geometry, even if you had solved the problem originally in some higher level geometry. And then there's the whole like idea of how is this distributed? How do users interact with this? So it's like this much kind of broader issue than just solving that design or engineering problem.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, like authorship and engineering. And I was trying to say in my talk was that you sort of have to do little bits of authorship in order to know what to engineer. Sometimes, like, you can have kind of a vague idea about some technology you want to build, but if it's not sort of positioned relative to users and what sort of makes users' lives better, it's moot in some cases, right?
What a great segue. That was actually my next question. Is I'm super happy to see the evolution of, you know, obviously the technologies you guys are working on. Matt Jensen from Autodesk, but we work together with a lot of these things. My questions are actually twofold. One is taking the tools that you're making collectively and thinking about them from a user-centered design standpoint. I mean, you kind of mentioned, like, okay, 95% of the people in your firm don't really care. They just want to get their job done. So much of the work that, you know, people in this type of community do is somewhat self-referential. Like, here's my new way to analyze this facade. That's awesome, but at the end of the day, people want to get their job done and go home. So have you thought about, I mean, there's a whole industry that, you know, we're collectively in software that thinks about things in a different way than just simply the technology. And it's interesting to think about that from the evolution of the making your own tools in architecture and engineering standpoint. And I'd be curious to hear, in the same way that you're learning about software engineering practices, what are your thoughts around the user-centered design standpoint? That's one question. And then the other question is propagation of these tools out on platforms, either inside of your firm or outside. I mean, like Hydro came out of an example, like, was it 2 years ago here, you know, similar types of things, taking a script and getting it out in a way that you might not know where it's going to go, but it's a good way to propagate these things out to a vaster audience.
I can speak to the first one, at least from a historical point of view in Fort Tomasetti. I mean, we started and kind of built out all these Grasshopper tools, did training, and then as Jonathan said, it was like totally limited reach. People just wouldn't use them. So it was this, I think, kind of maybe arrogance or, I don't know, like idealism about how we can sort of fundamentally change the way practice works. As opposed to what we're starting to try to do better now, which is like talking to people first and thinking about, like you said, Matt, trying to think about all these little projects we do from the user's point of view and back up decision making with, you know, sort of feedback from actual users instead of doing guesswork. A lot of the stuff we're trying to do is about short feedback cycles, and I'll tell you from experience, it's a long feedback cycle if you like work all the way up to a beta and then put it in somebody's hands. Like, you've done a ton of work already before you even know if people are into the idea. Forget about how it feels and works.
Yeah, that was one of maybe the biggest lessons I've learned so far from switching from Core Studio software development into Construe, where it's a lot, it's a lot less cushy now. In Core, we could just generate an idea, a concept, and roll with it for half a year, and then bring it to some people, and then maybe nobody would even use it. And like Ben said, we're now changing that, but that's kind of how we started. Put a lot of effort into stuff, and now if anybody who has Construe installed and who hasn't checked that little checkbox that says "Don't remind me again" that there's an update, probably 3 times a week sees that there's a new version out for plugins. So any of our users reports a bug or something that they need, and usually within 24 to 48 hours, there's a new version out. And so that's now how we've turned into a much more agile, like extremely agile process where feedback gets instantly integrated to the point where our roadmap, which used to be like years out, is very short now. So it's all about just instant user feedback. So that's, I don't know where, I think I learned this not in Core but in Construe, but I think this is actually something I would take back to Core now, to, like Ben said already, like talk to the users really early and then only implement what they ask for.
Yeah, I worry more about the kind of cultural side of this. Because to be able to like learn a new tool or a new method and take the time to train and take the time to absorb that, it's a bit of a luxury that it seems like, at least in my experience, architecture firms, project teams like don't have or refuse to take because they're by and large not in control control of the management of the project. It's like, I have to finish this by tomorrow, so I'm gonna use this really dumb Excel way. And I'm the project manager, and I know that you tried to get my designer to use this tool, but it's weird and confusing, and it makes me nervous, and I'm stressed, and I haven't slept in 2 weeks. And it's like, well, you know, if we don't take care of our like basic issues of like work-life balance, profitability, control over contracts, and writing smart contracts and good management, then like I'm certainly don't want to waste my time traveling around the world trying to like force kind of new things on people. So I think like all of your comments are totally valid, but I also think there needs to be a little bit of like, all right, some serious like top-down kind of self-reflection about company culture before you can even hope to have any success with the implementation of new processes.
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly, I think there's sort of there's a technology aspect of kind of just getting better at making intuitive user experiences. I guess that's somewhat technology and somewhat just sort of UI UX. But you know, one of the things that I'm most excited about in my current role is that like, you know, I get to prototype a tool and then I get to like spend a day observing somebody using it and understand, you know, when it didn't work for them or when it was confusing or when it like failed to solve the problem that they wanted it for. And because there are, you know, it's so much more than does it work or not, does it provide a valid solution or not. It's like, is it frustrating? Is it annoying? Does it, you know, is it counterintuitive? And I think it's neat to be able to kind of build up an intuition for those sorts of things above and beyond just like making stuff work.
One more
One
comment.
comment.
One more quick one. Just following up on Matt's second part of the question about distributing tools. I'm so glad you said top down because that's actually been some of the most successful adoptions of our tools that Core Studio has made is when, you know, the brass at the top have embraced the idea and forced people to do it. The bottom up sort of, you know, convince the people pressing the buttons has limited reach when there are these sort of higher level constraints. So yeah, the kind of culture going all the way up to the top management is super important.
I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, I have just two quick questions. One is the decision-making process in architecture is crazy, and so we're only as fast as that process. So how do we tackle that? And my second question is, why is everyone going to WeWork? Is there coding?
I don't know the answer to either of those. I think these guys
For the architects and
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, shout out to Woods Bagger because it was like the best architecture job I think possible. Like we had a really great time there, and I knew I would only leave if it was something kind of adjacent to or outside of traditional architectural practice. So the WeWork thing is about having the ability to. I mean, one of the things I think when we were mentioning the fleet of buildings, like the idea that before kind of WeWork, like in theory was even building a lot, they were like, we're going to collect data on what we do and then evaluate it. Like that was like there from the start. So I think like, I bet AECOM has a lot of data, but like, is it structured in a way that's even remotely useful to them? Like maybe not. So the kind of idea that there was an organization that kind of, and I'm probably like mythologizing it a little bit, but started that way with this idea that like, we're going to build this thing with a relatively kind of limited design space. We're going to treat it as a product, not a building. We're going to continuously improve it, and we're always going to collect apples to apples data on that user experience. It's pretty cool and allows you to kind of, and also with the vertical integration and the scale allows you to push like much deeper than you could before. So like the fact that I can think about how our models drive like construction site robots is awesome and something that like I probably couldn't have done in a typical architecture practice due to, you know, contracts, liability, whatever, scope of work.
I have no idea how to solve the decision problem.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Yeah, that's a tough one. Let's have another conference about that. I think that probably merits it. And you know, as for the WeWork thing, I mean, everything that Brian said, and you know, a major motivator too is just, you know, the team that I put up on that slide, like, and you know, outside ways of thinking about process. I mean, like in a way, a lot of what, you know, the teams that I'm interacting with are doing is architecture. That's what it is. But the like ways of thinking about it, ways of operating on it, ways of interrogating it are just totally different, and I find that really refreshing. But also, shout out to Winsbagged, which was like I think you know, the place that sort of enabled both of us to kind of, you know, skill up in those areas and kind of, you know, start to explore the frontiers of like what, you know, what's possible in the context of architectural organizations when it comes to deploying technology and buildings,
top-level
you know, top-level buy and all that, all those sort of computational tools. So, and I hear they're hiring, so.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, Ben, Brian, and Andrew.